Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Sunday mornings were supposed to be sacred. Eggs sizzling in the pan, sunlight sneaking through the kitchen blinds, and the smell of fresh coffee easing me into the day. I'd just finished buttering the second slice of toast when Tessa dropped it. Not the toast, the bomb. Oh, by the way, Brandon and his 3 kids are moving in this week. They've had a rough time. The knife stopped mid-spread. The butter clung to the toast, but my attention couldn't hold. My hand went still, and I glanced up, assuming I'd misheard. She wasn't looking at me, though. She was flipping through her phone, her legs crossed like she was telling me we were out of milk. I blinked. Brandon? Your brother? Yeah, she said, still scrolling. They just need a place for a bit. Maybe a month. Maybe 2. Maybe a bomb had just gone off in my chest. I cleared my throat. And by 3 kids, you mean? His actual 3 children, yes. She said it like I was the one being dense. I set the butter knife down carefully, suppressing the rising thud in my ears. You didn't think this needed a discussion? Oh, come on, Miles. You're always saying we have the space. Her voice had that chipper tone she used when she knew she'd done something bold and was daring me to challenge her. Besides, it's family. Family. I took a sip of coffee to keep from saying something I'd regret. The heat hit my tongue wrong. I winced. Maybe I should have welcomed the burn. She wasn't done. And I gave him your car. My cup halted just shy of the counter. You what? She looked up now, eyes finally meeting mine, but still with that casual calm that said this was already settled. The Altima. I mean, technically I bought it with my bonus from last year, so it's not like it's just yours. Brandon's car died, and he needed something reliable for the kids. I stared at her. Not the phone. Not the toast. Her. And I tried, genuinely tried, to find the version of her I married 7 years ago. The one who laughed at my dumb engineering jokes. Who cheered when I passed my certification exams. Who used to call me her anchor. But that woman wasn't sitting across from me now. This one, she was rerouting my entire life with a swipe and a shrug. That car, I said slowly, was the only reason I got through that out-of-town project last year. I slept in it more times than I care to admit. You really think it's fair to just hand it off? Her head tilted. Fair's fair, right? I used my money. There it was again. Fair's fair. Like we were tallying grocery receipts, not gutting trust. The silence between us stretched. I watched her take a bite of her toast, chew without urgency, as if she hadn't just detonated the foundation of our marriage before 9 a.m. She didn't even ask if I was okay with it, because she didn't care if I was. I stood up slowly, my chair dragging across the tile with a screech. It felt louder than it should have. Her eyes flicked toward me for a second, then back to her screen. Where are you going? She asked, not even pausing her scroll. For a drive, I said dryly. Oh wait, I don't have a car. That got her attention. Her head rose, brow furrowed, mouth slightly open like she hadn't expected sarcasm from me of all people. I wasn't the dramatic one in this marriage. I was the spreadsheet guy. The guy who quietly fixed the leaky sink before she even noticed it was dripping. The one who remembered her mom's birthday and bought flowers she'd claim were too much, but secretly adored. But something in me shifted right then. It wasn't the loss of the car, or the arrival of 3 new mouths to feed. It was the way she decided it all without me. Like I was a roommate she tolerated. A shadow in our shared life. You should have asked me, Tess, I said, voice calm but tight. She rolled her eyes. It's temporary. You always overreact. Maybe I did. Or maybe I'd underreacted for years, chalking up little slights as misunderstandings. Letting her loud drown out my quiet. Letting love masquerade as compromise. I walked to the front door. The morning sun was already warming the sidewalk, but I felt cold. Not from the breeze, but from the realization that this wasn't sudden. This was a slow unraveling. And somewhere between the buttered toast and the borrowed car, I realized I wasn't part of the conversation anymore. Just the consequences. Brandon arrived on a Tuesday morning like a storm without warning. No text, no heads up. Just the sound of tires grinding against the driveway and doors slamming shut. I watched from the upstairs window, coffee in hand, already bracing for the chaos that spilled out of the SUV like a circus act. 3 kids, loud and reckless, bursting onto my lawn like it was theirs. The youngest immediately dropped a juice box on the walkway. The oldest sprinted toward the porch, tracking mud over the steps I'd pressure-washed over the weekend. And Brandon? He didn't knock. He walked in like he owned the place. Tess, he hollered. We're here. I took a slow breath and came down the stairs. Tessa met me at the bottom with a bright smile, like she was greeting a beloved celebrity. Isn't this great? She whispered. Family under one roof. I looked past her at Brandon. He was setting his duffel bag, one of two total, on the floor like he didn't plan to unpack. He didn't even glance my way. The house, once quiet and methodical, transformed by the hour. Every surface became sticky. Every room felt occupied. I came home from work that first day to find my favorite chair commandeered by a teenager with a VR headset and chip dust on his shirt. The living room smelled like microwaved fish sticks. The TV, my TV, was blasting cartoons at a volume that could rival jet engines. I stood there, frozen. No one looked up, not even when I cleared my throat. Tessa emerged from the kitchen holding a tray of cookies. They're settling in, she said sweetly. Isn't that good? I forced a nod. Do they have any rules? She blinked at me. Rules. I tried again. Chores, quiet hours, a bedtime maybe. They've had a rough time, Miles. Don't be so uptight. That was her line now, her shield for everything. They've had a rough time. As if the death of peace in my own home was something I should silently mourn and move on from. Later that week, I stepped on a Lego barefoot in the hallway and nearly fell down the stairs. I limped to the kitchen, only to find Brandon using my chef's knife to slice a tomato directly on the granite counter. No cutting board. No thanks. No, hey, is this okay? Hey, I said as evenly as I could. Maybe try not to use the good knife like that. It dulls the blade. He smirked. Chill, bro. It's just a knife. Just a knife. I went to bed that night with a headache and a twitch in my jaw I couldn't stop. Tessa curled up beside me like nothing had changed, like we were still the same couple who once binge-watched home renovation shows and planned road trips we never took. You're really quiet lately, she murmured. I stared at the ceiling. There's a lot of noise in the house. Maybe I'm just balancing it out. She didn't reply, just turned over, pulled the blanket around her, and left me to my thoughts. The next day, Sophie visited. My sister was always blunt, always observant. She hadn't been in the door 5 minutes before her nose wrinkled at the smell of sour milk and barbecue chips. What's going on here? She asked, stepping over a toy dump truck on her way to the kitchen. Tessa's brother and his kids moved in. Her eyebrows shot up. When? Tuesday. And she told you when? Sunday morning. Over toast. Sophie glanced around, taking in the blanket fort draped across the couch, the juice-stained carpet, the dog. Whose dog? Snoring under the coffee table. She turned back to me with a look I hadn't seen since our dad missed my college graduation dinner. You okay, Miles? I smiled. Not because I meant it, but because it was easier than admitting the truth. Yeah, it's just temporary. But even as I said it, I didn't believe it. Nothing about this felt temporary. It felt like a full-scale invasion. My home, my sanctuary, had become a refuge for someone else's problems. And no one, not Tessa, not Brandon, not even the kids, acted like it was a favor. They acted like it was their right. The next morning, I stepped into the living room and found Brandon asleep on the couch, remote in hand, drooling onto the cushion. My cushion. The kids had left cereal bowls on the floor, and one of them had smeared chocolate pudding across the wall like it was finger paint. I stood in the middle of it all, this chaos, this noise, this constant sense of invasion, and I realized something that made my chest tighten. No one asked how I was doing. No one wondered what I was feeling. I was a fixture in this house. Not a man, not a husband, just a placeholder. And placeholders? They can be replaced. But what no one realized, not even me until that moment, was that I could replace myself too. I've always been a man of structure. I measure twice, cut once. I budget before I buy. That's the engineer in me, precise, methodical, intentional. So when the chaos in my home reached a boiling point, I did what came naturally. I began to document. It started with a simple list. One morning, while Brandon's kid screamed over who got the last toast or waffle and Tessa scrolled through her phone obliviously, I opened a blank spreadsheet on my laptop and titled it Household Expenses Actual Contributions. It was supposed to make me feel better. Objective, unemotional, just numbers. I started with the easy stuff. Living room furniture? Bought with my work bonus in 2020. Bedroom set? On my credit card, paid off over 18 months. The TV the kids now controlled with greasy fingers? Mine. The blender, the microwave, the sectional Brandon kept sleeping on like it was his personal mattress, all paid for by me. Tessa had contributed here and there, a rug or two, a few throw pillows, the dining table centerpiece she was weirdly proud of. But it was clear once I saw it all laid out. This house didn't just have my name on the mortgage. It had my fingerprint on every corner, every screw, every surface. The patio set out back. The one Brandon now used to chain smoke and FaceTime whoever he owed money to was listed under outdoor living. I still remembered the day it arrived, me drenched in sweat assembling it piece by piece while Tessa criticized the color. It's too beige, she'd said. Now, it was just another item being slowly ruined by people who didn't care what it cost or who paid for it. I brought it up that night, gently. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the kids finally asleep, Brandon somewhere on the phone. Tessa had a glass of wine in hand, and I waited until she took a sip before saying, I was looking at some of our household expenses today. She didn't look up. Oh, that's never good. I just wanted to understand how things are balanced. What we've both contributed. At that, she did look up, smirking. You're not keeping score, are you? No, I said carefully. Not score. Just perspective. Perspective, she repeated, almost laughing. Miles, this isn't a business merger. This is a marriage. We're supposed to be partners, not accountants. I nodded slowly, swallowing the frustration. Partners discuss things. Partners decide things together. Like who moves in, or who gets to give away the car I use every day. She waved her hand like I was being dramatic. You're still on about the car? I already explained that. You don't even drive it that much. That's not the point. She set the wine down with a soft clink. Then what is the point, Miles? Are you really going to sit here and tell me you're being mistreated because my brother and his kids needed help? I'm saying, I replied, more firmly now, that I am paying for a life that doesn't seem to include me anymore. I come home, and my stuff's being used, broken, given away. No one asks. No one says thank you. I'm a guest in my own home. You're being petty, she said, like the word was a pin she could pop my argument with. That word cut deeper than I expected. Petty. I wanted to scream that pettiness was never my style. That I've always been the one who stepped back so she could shine, the one who worked late to keep us comfortable, who stayed quiet in the name of peace. But now? Now I was being told that standing up for myself, for the things I worked hard for, made me petty. Instead, I pushed back from the table, stood up, and walked to the living room. My favorite chair was empty for once. I sat in it, hands gripping the armrest like they might anchor me to something that still felt like mine. The walls felt narrower, the ceiling lower. Everything about this house, once a sanctuary, now pressed down on me like a burden. Later that night, I stared at the ceiling in our dark bedroom, listening to Tessa breathe beside me like she hadn't just minimized every concern I'd voiced. And all I could think was, this isn't a misunderstanding. This is a pattern where I give and they take, where I pay and they enjoy, where I'm silent and they grow louder. And she calls it partnership. But I know better. This isn't about a car or a couch or even Brandon. It's about feeling invisible in the life I helped build. It's about being seen as a wallet instead of a man. It's about love turning into entitlement. And I realized then, lying in that bed, more alone than I'd ever felt, that I didn't need another conversation. I needed a plan. I didn't scream. I didn't storm out or punch walls or post passive-aggressive messages online. That's not who I am. That's not who I've ever been. I plan. I observe. I adjust. Quietly. Strategically. So that's what I did. The next morning, while the chaos of Brandon's kids swirled in the background, cartoons blaring, cereal being spilled on rugs, and someone crying over a broken game controller, I began the real work. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the folder I once reserved for tax documents and warranties. I cleared a space on the desk, my space, the one Brandon's eldest had tried to use for his homework once, and began to dig. Receipts, email confirmations, warranty cards, bank statements. Anything that had my name on it, I pulled. Anything I paid for, I documented. It wasn't revenge, it was clarity. If I was ever going to reclaim my life, I had to start by understanding what parts of it were truly mine. I didn't have to search far. The receipts were there, folded in the drawer where I kept the screwdriver set Tessa always borrowed and never returned. I remembered buying each item. The leather recliner I spent months saving for, the stainless steel tool chest Brandon had raided without asking, the cordless drill that mysteriously disappeared the same week Brandon decided to fix the fence. The fence still wasn't fixed. I set up labeled boxes in the garage. At first glance, it looked like I was cleaning. That was the beauty of it. Garage clean out, was scribbled on each box in thick black marker, but inside them, I was sorting through the pieces of my life that were going to leave this house with me. Each box had a system. Kitchenette had the cookware I'd bought from that expensive set Tessa never liked but always used. Tools B held everything I could salvage from Brandon's borrowing sprees. Living room core was the hardest one to touch. Our wedding photo had been sitting on that entertainment center for years. I picked it up, studied it. We looked happy back then. Not perfect, but trying. That was before the silence started slipping in between our sentences. I stared at the photo for a long time before placing it face down in the box. At night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. The shadows made patterns above me, and I followed them like I used to trace blueprints. That quiet, focused part of my brain, the one that built bridges and solved drainage problems, was now recalculating something more personal. When did love become Elise? I kept asking myself that, because that's what it felt like now. Conditional. Temporary. Like I was renting space in her world. Paying, maintaining, upgrading, but never owning. Not really. And with every decision she made without me, every dismissal of my concerns, I felt myself slipping further away from the man I used to be in this marriage. I wasn't a partner. I was a placeholder. An ATM with a wedding band. The next weekend, Brandon grilled burgers in the backyard using the propane I'd paid for and the grill I'd assembled. Tessa laughed from the patio, sipping wine, completely at ease. I stood at the kitchen window, watching through the smudged glass. They were comfortable. Too comfortable. Brandon leaned back in one of the patio chairs, my patio chairs, and shouted for one of the kids to get him a soda. They trampled across the lawn, knocking over the garden gnome Tessa had insisted on but hadn't touched since it arrived. She didn't flinch. Just laughed louder. I went back to the garage. Box after box was nearly ready now. I didn't rush it. I measured, inventoried, stacked. This wasn't an escape plan. It was an extraction. A reclaiming. And every time I taped another box shut, I felt something return. A piece of myself I hadn't realized had gone missing. Not anger. Not bitterness. Just clarity. And power. I wasn't planning a fight. I was planning my exit. One chair at a time. One receipt at a time. And when the moment came, when the last box was sealed and the last shadow in the ceiling stopped shifting, I knew I wouldn't raise my voice. I wouldn't leave a note. I wouldn't even slam the door. I'd just leave. Because when you've been erased slowly, systematically, the most powerful thing you can do isn't yell. It's disappear with everything they thought they'd get to keep. It was a Friday night when the final straw landed, light as dust but sharp as glass. I pulled into the driveway after a long day of back-to-back site inspections and reports. My neck was sore from hours of spreadsheets and phone calls, and I was already imagining the quiet hum of the recliner and the smell of leftovers waiting in the fridge. Instead, I opened the front door and walked into someone else's life. Brandon was in my chair. The chair. The one I bought after that awful summer of back pain. High-backed, memory foam, perfect lumbar support. He had one leg slung over the armrest, the other bouncing along to the beat of a loud action movie blaring on my TV. Popcorn littered the floor. The coffee table was sticky with soda rings. My tools, were scattered outside. I could see them from the hallway window. Wrenches in the grass. My level set, the one I used for sighting precision, half buried under a pile of fast food wrappers. No one looked up when I entered. No one said hello. No one cared. I closed the door slowly, feeling something heavy settle in my chest. I didn't drop my bag. Didn't take off my shoes. I walked past Brandon, who gave me a lazy thumbs up without moving from my chair, and climbed the stairs in silence. Our bedroom was empty. Tessa had left a note on the dresser, scribbled in pink ink on a receipt. Want to get my nails done with Darla. Don't wait up. No dinner. No text. No mention of where the kids were or if they'd eaten. Just off, out, gone, like she didn't share this home with me. I stepped into the bathroom and turned on the shower, hot as I could stand it. I let the steam blur the mirror and the noise downstairs fade into nothing. When I stepped out, wrapped in a towel, I stared at myself. 38. Civil engineer. Homeowner. And I couldn't remember the last time I felt respected in my own house. I got dressed. Clean jeans, long-sleeved shirt, clean socks. I combed my hair. I packed an overnight bag, but not for an overnight stay. This wasn't a break. It was the beginning of the end. At 11:57 p.m., I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my phone. My hands didn't shake. My breathing didn't falter. It was all calm unnaturally so. I dialed the number I'd looked up weeks ago, saved in a folder labeled contingency. Hello, a sleepy voice answered. This is Miles Carter. I need 3 movers. 2 trucks. Address is 1437 Hyacinth Lane. Arrival at 6 sharp. Everything's boxed and labeled. A pause. Then, understood, Mr. Carter. We'll be there. I hung up. Then I waited. At dawn, the sky was streaked in peach and gray. Birds chirped outside like it was any other Saturday. But this wasn't any Saturday. This was evacuation day. At 6:01 a.m., the trucks rolled up. The movers, professional, efficient, silent, got to work. I opened the garage, handed them the manifest, and pointed them toward the labeled boxes. Take every box marked with my initials, I said. And this furniture, recliner, office desk, master bed frame, living room table, bookshelf, grill, tools. They moved like a symphony. No questions, no judgment. Just motion. Quiet, like I liked it. At 6:47 a.m., I unscrewed the last wall-mounted speaker from the entertainment system I'd built by hand. At 7:10, I stood in the empty living room, now echoing with the hollowness it deserved. Brandon's duffel bag was still in the hallway. The TV was gone. The chairs, mine, were gone. The rug? Gone. At 7:55 a.m., I loaded the last labeled box into my own car. The one I'd kept at work for emergencies. Tessa's bonus money hadn't touched this one. At 7:59 a.m., I walked into the kitchen. The smell of spilled apple juice and burnt toast still lingered. I opened the drawer by the fridge, the one no one ever cleaned, and left behind a single envelope. Inside, a flash drive and a printout. Every receipt, every warranty, every transaction. Tessa had said, fair's fair. I was just honoring that agreement. By 8 a.m., the house was stripped of everything I'd poured into it. Even the air felt lighter. I stepped outside, locked the garage, and turned back once. Not to mourn, just to witness. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't fought. I had planned. And now, I was gone. I didn't turn on my phone until noon. I sat in the front seat of my car, parked outside a coffee shop I used to visit before the noise crept into my life, and just stared at the blank screen for a while. The silence was golden. My body, still aching from the early morning move, welcomed the quiet like an old friend. No footsteps running overhead. No cartoons at top volume. No passive-aggressive, "Are you okay?" from someone who never waited for the answer. Just me, a fresh cup of coffee, and a breeze slipping through the cracked window. But eventually, I knew I had to face it. I pressed the power button. The phone buzzed violently in my hand as it lit up. A tidal wave of notifications crashed into me: texts, missed calls, voicemails. The number at the top of the screen? 125. I didn't even react. I just scrolled. Tessa had started texting around 8:15 a.m. Apparently, that was when Brandon had come home from an early morning store run and found the house altered. Miles, where is the TV? What's going on? Are you pulling a prank or something? The couch is gone. The rug is gone, Miles. Brandon just walked in with the kids and they're crying. There's nothing here. Are you serious right now? It escalated quickly from confusion to rage. This is so immature. You left children on the floor. How dare you do this without telling me? You took the tools too? Who even does that? Then came the guilt-laced messages, dripping in disbelief. I don't even know who you are anymore. We were supposed to be a team. You're not acting like a man. You're acting like a child with a spreadsheet. Then came the voicemails. Her voice jumped between furious, pleading, and cracking like she was on the edge of tears. Pick up the phone, Miles. I'm serious. This is not okay. The kids are confused. Brandon is furious. And why are you doing this to me? You left an empty house. Do you even know what that feels like? To walk in and realize someone erased you. It's just stuff, right? It's just things. Why are you acting like it's your soul in that couch? I almost laughed at that one. Because no, of course it wasn't about the couch. It wasn't about the lamp or the grill or the TV. It was about the choices. The silence. The disregard. I scrolled past a few more angry texts, then paused at a single one that was different. Short. Hello. Are you happy now? I took another sip of coffee and opened my reply box. I thought about what to say, about what needed to be said. Then I typed. Everything I took, I paid for. Receipts are in the drawer by the fridge. Fair's fair, remember? I stared at the message for a few seconds before hitting send. Then I turned the phone face down and exhaled. I wasn't trying to punish her. I wasn't trying to cause pain. But I wasn't going to let mine be dismissed anymore, either. For so long, I'd stayed quiet. I swallowed my frustration, my sadness, my slow slide into invisibility. I made excuses for her choices. I rationalized the imbalance. I accepted less and called it compromise. But the thing about quiet people is that when they leave, it's never loud. It's final. By late afternoon, the messages had slowed. The last one was a photo of the kids sitting on the floor, blankets bundled around them like little forts. No caption, just guilt in image form. I looked at them, innocent, yes. Loud, messy, disruptive, sure. But they weren't the villains. They were just kids, caught in someone else's story. Brandon, on the other hand, he hadn't texted once, which didn't surprise me. Brandon never faced problems, he sidestepped them. Let someone else absorb the cost. And for too long, that someone had been me. I drove to the storage unit I'd reserved weeks earlier. The movers had done a pristine job. Everything was stacked with care, nothing damaged. My chair sat in the corner, draped in its protective cover, waiting. I sat in it for a moment, inside the quiet unit, and let the silence settle deep into my bones. This wasn't the end of a marriage. It was the beginning of me reclaiming something I hadn't even realized I'd lost. Ownership of my peace. It was Sophie's house that caught the storm. Tessa didn't call ahead. She didn't knock. She showed up at the doorstep just before sunset, face flushed, jaw clenched, eyes wild with rage. I heard the slam of her car door before Sophie did. I was in the back room, my temporary room, unpacking a few things and sipping lukewarm tea when the doorbell rang. Sophie opened the door, and Tessa barely let her speak. "Where is he?" she demanded, brushing past like she still had permission to enter any space that once had my name on it. I stepped out, calm as stone. I didn't flinch. I didn't hide. I met her glare head on. "You're pathetic, Miles," she snapped before I could say a word. Her voice cracked, not with sadness, but with fury. "You left children on the floor. They cried. Do you even care?" Sophie closed the door softly behind her and crossed her arms. She stood between us like a line I'd drawn but never voiced. "I left furniture," I replied, steady. "I left what was mine. And you know what? I left it quietly." "You left me," she shouted, taking a step forward. "No," Sophie interrupted, sharp and clear. "He left your disrespect." Tessa turned on her, eyes wide. "This is between us." "No," Sophie said again, louder. "It stopped being between you and him when you moved your brother and his 3 kids into that house without asking, and handed away his car like it was a coat you didn't want anymore." Tessa's lips parted, then pressed tight again. "You're my husband," she hissed at me, clenching her fists. "You don't just walk away because things got inconvenient." "You're right," I said softly. "I walked away because I stopped being your partner. I became a resource, a placeholder, a background character in your family's drama." She looked stunned, like she wasn't expecting a full sentence, just a mumbled apology or silence she could fill with guilt. "You want to talk about the kids crying?" I went on, my voice calm but firmer now. "Let's talk about how many nights I went to bed wondering if I even mattered to you anymore. Let's talk about the silence when I tried to bring up how I felt. Or the laughter you gave Brandon when he took over my house like it was a damn Airbnb." Tessa blinked rapidly. Her anger flickered, replaced for just a moment by confusion. Or maybe realization. I reached into the folder Sophie had helped me organize and handed her a stack of papers, neat, collated, itemized. Receipts, dates, photos. A paper trail of 7 years of building a life. "You said it yourself, fair's fair," I told her, handing over the file. "That's what I paid for. That's what I took." She flipped through the pages, eyes scanning, face shifting with each new record. "You really kept everything?" "No," I said. "I left you the one thing I couldn't pack." She looked up, the benefit of the doubt. For a second, she was quiet, just breathing hard. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but the words didn't come. Sophie didn't move. "You didn't even try to talk to me," Tessa said finally, softer now. "You just disappeared." "I tried," I said. "You just weren't listening. And I got tired of speaking to someone who already decided my value." She looked down at the folder again, thumbing through a list of purchases she never noticed, never asked about. I watched her take in the reality of what she'd lost. Not just a man, but a structure. A system. A quiet presence that kept the home together. "You didn't leave me with nothing," she muttered. "No," I agreed. "I left you with exactly what you gave me." Her mouth opened, ready to fight again, but there was no fire left in her. No ground to stand on. She turned, folder still clutched tight, and opened the door. Sophie watched her go. Didn't say a word. When the door clicked shut behind her, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Sophie turned to me. You okay? I nodded. Getting there. She smiled gently and gave me a hug that didn't need words. That night, as I lay in the quiet of the guest room, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel broken. I felt weightless, like I'd finally stepped out of a story that no longer fit me. And for the first time in years, I slept through the night. Divorce, I'd heard, could be brutal. Screaming matches, lawyers with shark eyes, tug of war over silverware and coffee tables. But that wasn't our story. Not because it wasn't painful, but because the battle had already been fought in silence over months and years. By the time we signed the paperwork, the war had already been lost. Quietly, patiently, I sent the papers through a lawyer I found on Sophie's recommendation. Simple, professional, direct. Tessa tried to argue at first, but her energy had shifted. The fire from Sophie's house had dulled into something else. Not remorse, not sadness, just resignation. She met me at the notary office on a rainy Thursday. We didn't speak much. Her eyeliner was perfect, her nails freshly done. I remember thinking how put together she looked for a woman whose world had just collapsed. Or maybe she didn't think it had. Maybe, to her, it was just a rebranding. A pivot. She signed after 10 minutes of silent reviewing. When she slid the papers across to me, her hand hesitated, like she wanted to say something. But whatever it was, she swallowed it. You really took everything, she said at last, voice quiet, almost reflective. No, I replied, not unkindly. I left the things I didn't pay for. I left what was yours. She looked up, searching my face for weakness or maybe sentiment. Even the blender? I almost smiled. Even the blender. Legally, there wasn't much she could do. I'd kept records. Years of them. Receipts, contracts, warranties. Dated, organized, scanned. She tried to argue she'd contributed in other ways emotionally, socially, decoratively. But courts don't measure vibes. They measure ownership. She made one last attempt to claim the car. That bonus was mine, Miles. My name's on the dealership paperwork. I'd expected it. I pulled out the financing documents. Showed the judge the breakdown of who paid what, month after month. Her bonus covered 10% of the down payment. I covered the rest, monthly installments, maintenance, insurance, everything. The judge nodded once and marked the car as mine. She didn't argue after that. Outside the courthouse, she lingered like she was waiting for some grand farewell. But there was no monologue. No closure speech. Just the slap of raindrops on the sidewalk and the faint scent of wet concrete. I hope you find someone who appreciates spreadsheets, she said, trying for sarcasm but falling short. I hope you find someone who listens, I replied simply. She turned, hair swinging over her shoulder, and walked away. The strangest part was the peace that followed. There were no more unexpected footsteps down the hall. No strangers in the kitchen. No one throwing shade for needing quiet after a long day. My apartment, modest, clean, tucked above a bakery, was mine in every sense. No coasters on the table. No wine glasses left half full on the counter. Just structure. Simplicity. Silence. I didn't rush to fill the space. I bought what I needed. A simple bed, a desk, a set of dishes. The first luxury item I purchased was a new recliner. Not the same model. This one was different. Firmer. Sleek. A little darker than I expected, but it suited the space. It suited me. Sophie came by the day it was delivered, armed with takeout and 2 beers. She flopped onto the couch with a grin. This is the cleanest I've seen you live since college. Peaceful, isn't it? She looked around. You needed this. I didn't know how much until it was gone. We ate in comfortable silence, the kind only siblings can share. No background noise. No screaming kids. Just the occasional clink of chopsticks against the container. I asked about Brandon. Still couch surfing, she said. Sold the car a few weeks ago. I raised an eyebrow. Seriously? Yep. Used the money for a security deposit. Got evicted anyway. Couldn't make rent after 3 months. Guess bonus cars don't pay the bills. I didn't laugh. I didn't gloat. I just sipped my drink and leaned back into my new chair, letting the hum of the city drift in through the window. Tessa had tried to reach out again, once. A short email about taxes. I answered, factual, polite, nothing more. She didn't reply. Darla, surprisingly, backed off too. I think she saw the receipts, the truth laid bare in numbers and paper. And in a world of perception, hard facts still held power. In time, the ripples faded. The whispers quieted. And I found myself alone, but not lonely. Just whole, in a way I hadn't felt in years. And when I finally sat down in that new chair, TV off, coffee in hand, looking out over the city lights, I smiled. Because I didn't miss the noise. I missed me. And I had finally come home to him. It had been months since the dust settled, since the last box was unpacked, the final email exchanged, the final document filed. I was moving forward. Slowly, surely. I'd even started waking up before my alarm again, a habit I'd lost during the mess. There was a calm rhythm to my days now. Early mornings with black coffee, long hours at work, evenings with a book or the hum of an old jazz playlist filling my apartment. So when her name lit up my phone screen, I just stared at it. Tessa. The name blinked on the caller ID like it still had weight, like it still had permission. I didn't answer right away. I let it ring, watched it die, then listened to the silence that followed. My finger hovered over the notification. Curiosity wasn't a weakness, it was closure. So I played the voicemail. Hey, her voice started, low, hesitant. It's me. Like I wouldn't know. Just wondering, how are you? I paused the message right there. Not out of anger. Just disbelief. She sounded gentle. Too gentle. The way she used to when she wanted something but didn't know how to ask. I hit play again. I know it's been a while. I've been thinking a lot lately. About us. About everything. She hesitated, the static filling the gap where her pride used to be. Brandon's gone. He left a note and took off. Again. No warning. The kids are with their grandma now, my mom's place in Arizona. It's quieter. I think they're better off. Another pause. A breath that shivered through the line. I miss us, Miles. I miss the way things used to be. I leaned back in my chair, the apartment still as ever. I stared at the ceiling like it might explain how a person could bulldoze your life, then come back asking if the debris could be built into something new. She kept talking. I know I didn't do things right. I was overwhelmed. I thought I was helping my brother, but maybe I just made everything worse. I see it now. The noise. The disrespect. I didn't protect what we had. Her voice cracked on that last word. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel pity. I just felt distance. Like her voice was beaming in from a version of my life that no longer existed. I listened until the end. Call me, please. Even if you don't want to talk. Just let me know how you're doing. I didn't call her back, but I did text. Peaceful. That was all I said. It was the truth. A clean truth, delivered without venom. 5 minutes later, she texted again. Can we meet? I didn't reply. An hour later, she tried again. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I'm just asking. Please. Still, I said nothing. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because I realized something in that silence. Something I had waited years to understand. She didn't miss me. She missed stability. She missed furniture. She missed coffee that didn't run out. Bills that were always paid. She missed a man who didn't shout, but showed up. Who absorbed every hit with a nod and fixed problems while she scrolled. She missed a quiet servant dressed as a husband. I didn't know her that anymore. Later that night, Sophie called. You okay? She asked. She called. Figured. She said she missed us. Sophie didn't say anything at first. She knew the weight of that sentence. And what did you say? I told her I'm peaceful. Sophie smiled into the phone. I could hear it. Good. She thinks I'm being cold. You're not cold, Miles, she said. You're finally warm. In a place that respects you. I stared out the window. The skyline shimmered in the dark, the soft glow of city lights blinking like quiet promises. Below, people moved with purpose, going places, returning to people who noticed when they walked in the door. She left me the moment she started making decisions without me. I said, I just didn't realize I was allowed to leave back. You're more than allowed. You're overdue. There was peace in saying it out loud, in naming the truth and watching it sit calmly between syllables. After we hung up, I walked to my new recliner and sat down. The leather was cool against my arms. The apartment was dark except for the amber hue of a single lamp by the window. The phone buzzed again. One more message. I just want a second chance. I blocked the number. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Because closure doesn't always come in a box or a conversation. Sometimes it's a quiet block, a still room, a full breath. And for the first time in years, I exhaled without needing anyone to catch me. There's a kind of silence that feels like suffocation, the kind that clings to the corners of a house too full of tension and not enough truth. But there's another kind too, the one I have now. The one that greets me when I unlock the door after a long day, settle into my new place, and hear nothing but the low hum of the city outside. It's not empty. It's intentional. I didn't rebuild overnight. Peace isn't an Amazon delivery. It's earned. It's chosen. I started slow, relearning myself, my routines, my voice. I'd forgotten how good it felt to wake up and only hear my own breathing. No stomping feet. No loud cartoons echoing down the hallway. Just sunlight slipping through blinds and the gentle gurgle of a coffee maker I picked out just for me. At work, things began to click again. The promotion I'd put off applying for, worried it would pull me away from the circus at home, finally became mine. I didn't even have to fight for it. My supervisor called me into her office one afternoon, glanced at my new design proposal, and said, "Miles, we've been underusing you." I smiled. I've been underusing myself. I think she knew what I meant. Outside of work, I reached out to old friends. Guys I used to play racquetball with on Saturdays. People I hadn't seen in years because I was always the one canceling plans, making excuses. Family stuff, I'd say, or something came up. The truth was, I'd been prioritizing a life that treated me like background noise. But now I had space for real conversations. Laughter over wings and beer. Long walks that ended in real connection, not resentment. Sophie and I grew closer too. She'd always been the one person who saw me, even when I tried to hide how unhappy I'd been. She never said, "I told you so." She didn't have to. She just showed up. One night, after helping me assemble a bookshelf, she dropped onto the floor, back against the wall, and said, "You look lighter." I paused, setting down a screwdriver. "I feel it." I booked a trip not long after that. Just a weekend getaway, mountains, fresh air, no itinerary. I left my phone on silent and brought a sketch pad I hadn't touched in years. As the sun came up on the second morning, painting the sky in amber and rose, I found myself sketching a bridge, not because I had to, not for a project or a paycheck, just because I wanted to. The lines were clean, the proportions balanced. It felt like a message from the version of me I thought I'd buried. On the flight home, I stared out the window and realized I didn't miss the past. Not the way some people do. Not as a longing or a what if. I didn't want Tessa back. I didn't want the house or the furniture or even the quiet that came from biting my tongue. I wanted this. The clarity. The self-respect. The ability to sit with myself and not feel like I was disappearing in someone else's story. When I got back, I framed the sketch. It sits above my new desk now, reminder and promise, both. Every day, I write new blueprints, not for houses, not for bridges, but for a life I get to build on my own terms. No more leases on love. No more temporary peace. Just solid foundation. Sometimes I think about what I'd say to the version of me spreading butter on toast that Sunday morning, just before the bombshell dropped. I wouldn't warn him. I'd thank him. Because he didn't explode. He didn't fight dirty. He stayed calm. He let the storm pass, then walked out with dignity and every receipt to his name. He chose himself. That's the man I am now. And if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that you don't have to raise your voice to reclaim your power. You don't need to make a scene, break plates, or send angry letters. You just need to raise your standards and walk away with peace in your chest, with your head high, with your receipts in hand, and the blueprint of a better life waiting just on the other side of the door.